Good morning and welcome to our Bordeaux Unpicked podcast. We're into week 4 of releases. A quiet week this week. So he sensed that his time was right to get away and recharge his batteries. Joe Muller is not with us today. He's in New York. So instead, I have returning again.
Yeah, is Will Hargrave. Very pleased to be here.
Good. A busy week, even though sort of slow on the release side. Yeah. So since we last spoke, let's get straight into it. We spoke on Wednesday last week, and then Thursday and Friday, a couple of good releases that we really enjoyed. First one, Grand Puy Lacoste, 273 for 6. One of my favourites of the vintage. Your thoughts on it, Will?
Yeah, I mean, I always enjoy going to taste there, and I'm on record saying I think since 2014, and that's not to say that previously things weren't good, but since 2014, I just think they are on brilliant form, and I think it's dependable in an exciting way. I think they just make such good wine. I'd never be disappointed to see a bottle of Grand Puy Lacoste. I think if you follow it, I think it's one to buy. And if you don't, actually, I think it's probably one to buy. I think that kind of class of wine from a family, you know exactly what they're doing in a vintage like this is great. It's going to drink relatively early for Pauillac and it'll age. So I don't really see any downside to Grand Puy Lacoste.
Yeah, just a classic Pauillac there. My tasting notes this year, full of red fruit, black fruit, had that sort of cool mineral chalkiness that you get from best Pauillacs as well. It came in just above our recommended buy price. But having said that, Emmeline Barry doesn't usually sort of mess around too much with her pricing, so we can forgive her a little bit on that sense. It is just a wine that if you follow it, it's delicious. And then we had Le Roc released at 120 for 6, which we'll talk a little bit more about the Le Roc vineyard at some point in the next 10 minutes or so.
Yes.
That for me is one of the just easy drinkers of the vintage.
Yeah, I mean, I was having a think and chatting with Max, who works on the sort of buying side of the campaign, and I think one thing we might look at doing towards the end is a sort of summary and just say, look, here's 6 cases from 6 different communes, or maybe 8 cases from 8 different communes. And I think in that sort of price bracket, Le Roc would really sit well. It's well cited, as Aaron says. We'll come on to that. But yeah, I think it's good, and it's always nice to get in there on a property that is kind of on the up. And Le Roc, I think, is that. It's an interesting one because I don't think they used to sell much through the Place. They sold almost exclusively in France for a long, long time. And so, yeah, I don't. Again, I think as a drinker at that sort of price, I've actually bought some halves for myself because it's something I just don't have any halves of, and maybe I'm trying to be healthy or something, or maybe it's just when you get back late and you want half a bottle of something. But I think Le Roc's a nice little buy.
I cannot believe that you buy half bottles.
Well, I don't until now.
Wow, head of fine wine buying half bottles. There we go. The rest of the releases for the week. I think Joe Muller described it best to me, that there was just a bit of flotsam and jetsam about Lagrange, Le Gaffelier, Cantonac Brown, all very nice wines, but nothing that we sort of tasted and were like, right, we need to get on these. There's plenty more to come in the next couple of weeks. Instead, last week we were focusing on the Moueix releases, the Mitjavile releases, so more of the right bank. How's that gone for you, Will?
Yeah, very well. I mean, I think it's a nice mention that people actually get a little bit of a chance to think about the wines here. We try and do the offer properly and then let people have a week or so to make their picks. And I think that just exactly as I said last week. I think both the letter wines, LFP, La Fleur Petrus, and CBM, Bel-Air Menange, were absolutely brilliant. So I focused quite a lot on those. The Hosanna fans are in for Hosanna, and as they should be. And La Tour Pomerol, which I sort of put myself in the unofficial brand sort of manager role for on that, because I just adore it, has gone well too. So, and then across Mitjavile, I mean, those people who know the sort of wizardry that Francois and Lily Mitjavile, who actually was interestingly in town on Wednesday for a Rock and L'Orage dinner, People who know the Mitjavile stable know that you just buy it and you tuck it away, and you can drink it any time in 4 years or 40 years. So those have gone pretty well.
Yeah, I fully agree with you on that. Belle and Moueix for me, really great this year. Tasting there at that new winery, that was just fantastic. So nice to see that people have responded to that as well. For me, La Fleur Petrus went really well, Belle and Moueix as well. But what do you think this year, 2023? Is it a Pomerol vintage or a Saint-Emilion vintage? If you had to choose, they're both fantastic.
Between the two, I thought you were going to ask whether it's right or left bank, and I think actually we are firmly in the right bank category almost all the time. And actually, I think there are great wines across all communes, and that's not to say that makes it a great vintage. It's a very good vintage, but I don't think there's a massive balance between the two. But I'm not going to be too political and not answer your question. I think the plushness of Pomerol maybe ever so slightly wins out across the whole piece.
Yeah.
There are some absolutely magnificent Saint-Emilion. So that's what I'm saying. And Saint-Emilion, we have to remember, is, I think I'm right in saying, the biggest commune in France, actually, in terms of its terminology, and a number of chateaux and things. So we'll see. But yeah, I would slightly go down the Pomerol over Saint-Emilion, but I think that's picking holes in things. And as a whole, yeah, from Saint-Estèphe to Margaux and up to Côte de Bourg, there are good wines all over the shop, just as there are slight misfires.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned it already in my notes when everyone laughs at me for scoring everything highly and become the resident suckling. I scored Saint-Julien really highly this year, Pauillac really highly, and Pomerol. Saint-Emilion I thought was very good, but just going back over my notes, it does show that I have a bit of a personal preference for Pomerol this year. Very much on me though, because just all the wines are great, plush and big, loads of ripe black fruit as well. So it should be a fantastic year for them. There is a little bit of the Mitjavile wines left, I think.
We're going to have a look today, and I think there will be which as we sort of plan to have, to be perfectly honest. Tertram always gets close to sell out. Domaine de Combe, which is something we've only done for 2 or 3 years, is definitely worth a look. And L'Orage, as to briefly go over what I just mentioned, we had Luli Mitjavile in town and did a dinner downstairs at Noisy last Wednesday, and to taste 18 and 20, L'Orage was brilliant. I thought 20 is an absolute belter. We then had Rock 14 and 17, which actually are 2 vintages I particularly love across their stables. And then Magnums of L'Orage 15, and I think that you could see in that sort of 15 vintage and that, coming on for 9 years of maturity, it was just absolutely delicious. And so I think all the wines went down well, as they should. But yeah, you could see some real class from L'Orage, and again, it's a young project, so it's one of those vintage after vintage is improving.
Yeah, I think it was released at 325 for 12, and you will not drink better for that value. It's great.
And I think if you're talking about entertaining friends who like wine but maybe aren't as obsessed as some of us, L'Orage in mags, and you've got friends around, whether it's barbecue or cottage pie or whatever you want, it's just a belter. So.
You're not offering them halves of that.
No. I'm starting to regret my halves comment already, Mr. Eccles.
Right, so this week all the Bordelais are out in Hong Kong for Vinexpo. It's not all about the UK market, so that's why there is a bit of a lull in things. The Châteaux seem to enjoy this, that there's a little bit of a break in the very best vintage releases. This gives everyone like a bit of a chance for a break before they go back in. For me, it's a little bit. It just puts the stops on everything. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, you're right in that it has happened in the last few years. I think this year's campaign, we're getting a lot more information about what's going to come out, so we'll be able to talk about what's coming out next week in a minute. That isn't a good advantage. Things have been quick after we got back from tasting. That's been good. The tasting itself has moved back post-COVID a couple of weeks, which sort of takes Easter out of the equation and is better for tasting the wines. So that's good. So I think there are many improvements they've made. Having this week's gap in the middle is a bit of a fiddle. I agree. And also, I think Bordeaux is very aware that needs Asia to fall not back in love with it. I think Asia still loves the wines, but in terms of buying them on primeur. So I think that's why they have gone out there, as you say, sort of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is the 3 days of Vinexpo in Hong Kong. So yeah, I expect things will fire back into action on Monday. But I think with America probably not buying massively because there are, to be sort of bluntly political about it, there are concerns about America and about tax levies that might be put on things. So I think the Americans are quite quiet on the vintage. So I think, Bordeaux is out wooing Asia. And that actually makes sense from their point of view, as long as we continue to see decent prices.
Yeah, the days of the big price releases when the Asian market was sort of fully invested in 2009, 2010, it's 15 years ago now. So at least sort of you want people to be interested, and obviously the Bordelais have to sell to quite a wide range of markets. It's just that balancing act, and it just falls during all the releases.
Yeah, and also, the only other thing I'd add is you can see this from the fact that there are Friday releases. When you get a big campaign and both America and Asia are in, then you see very few releases on Friday because of the time zone scenario, and the negotiators don't know what to hold back for the States later in the day and how these all work. So I think that's a little bit of an indicator that it's a more traditional market orientated campaign. But then there's Cos d'Estrade, as we discussed a couple of weeks ago, who often, they haven't come out on Saturday or Sunday yet, but they may do. And Moueix came out on the bank holiday Monday, as we discussed last week. So things are changing.
Right, there are all of our gripes with the Bordelais done.
Well, no, I think it just shows how it works and doesn't work as a campaign. But as I say, actually, in terms of Bordeaux listening, being prompt, giving us more communication about what's coming out, most of the price reductions, I think we can't really say that Bordeaux hasn't listened. So that's a positive.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So this week, not many releases, but the one main one for us is Rocheyron. So
yeah,
take it away.
Yes, Rocheyron, for those who don't know, is Peter Sisseck and Silvio Denz, although Peter is very much the exec on it. Estate in Saint Christophe de Barde, which is just outside Saint-Emilion village, but is very much Saint-Emilion Grand Cru. Peter started from 2010, although he literally took on the vineyard in June, I think it was 2010. So they finished off the season, did the harvest, made the wine. But he's been massively improving the vineyard in terms of viticulture. He's gone over to biodynamic, and I've massively enjoyed watching this. Peter loves Bordeaux. Obviously, he's famous for Pingus and Flor de Pingus, as well as his Vinacurales down in Sherry. But it's been a hell of a project to watch, and I think there've been 12. I think is the first vintage he sort of started to really show what could be done there. 16's a step up again, and I think that 20 likewise. Just getting to know that vineyard, it's a pretty heavy dollar per Cabernet Franc in there, really lovely parcels, and we really enjoyed tasting. And he's, which I think is interesting, and maybe is the way forward for Bordeaux in some regards, is that he very much does what the Mitjaviles do and just keeps his price consistent year on year. And those, I think, who are starting to open up, things like the 16 and the 14, 16, 12, are really starting to see, that it's a bit of a gem.
Yeah, we opened a couple of vintages 2 weeks ago with Guy, fine wine buyer here, and
Yes.
The wines were awesome, as you said. There's that 25% Cabernet Franc alongside 75% Merlot. The Merlot gives you that really rich, energetic fruit, and then the Cabernet Franc just fires through with like this really nice vein of acidity. There's some chalkiness, like that minerality that you really want from the best Saint-Emilion, and you can tell that it's going to age well. It's fantastic, and I say delicious far too much, but it is completely delicious.
Yeah.
And 2023 is no different really, because you've got that sort of that bit of coolness where it translates into the vineyard. It's not just a bit of a monster. And also worth saying, Peter ferments it at lower temperatures than most of his neighbours.
And he's not a new oak. He's not a big new oak kind of guy, which also in Saint-Emilion almost in particular is very, very important. And we had the 22 with him at supper. he bought the sort of naked bottle with him, had literally just been bottled, and was absolutely delicious. So not will age because it's a structured vintage 22, but I think the sort of 20 through to 23 are a very, very interesting section of wines.
Hasten to add that was the 18 that got the that bottle of Rocheyron at supper. I was on the roadside with Joe Muller somewhere in my ditch and fast asleep, I think. So releases you've not told me yet. The 2022 was released at 415 per 6.
We're exactly the same. Exactly the same. Again, as I said, Peter is just very consistent with his prices. Doesn't want to see massive yo-yo pricing and inconsistencies. So, and it's a small vineyard.
I think it stood out for me in Saint-Emilion. Obviously, mentioned Belle and Moueix, which is a little bit more. I always like Canon, but this year Rocheyron trumped it a little bit. So great wines, and they should be good just to get stuck into to see what Peter's doing in Saint-Emilion with that sort of little corner of Larocque that he purchased on hard limestone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is the thing. So Larocque, which is where as an estate, Pays-Mouton, which is in the Merck's offer, also comes from. So Larocque, Pays-Mouton, and Rocheyron are very much the sort of Saint Christophe de Bard gang, if you like. So yeah, it's very interesting to follow.
Yeah. Right. So we've managed to fill that out, considering there's only been one release this week. Next week we are we know that it's going to be a bit of madness. Monday I'm really looking forward to, because finally, after talking about quite a few of the wines that I loved this year, there's going to be some releases of them. So Branner de Cru and the Pichons on Monday.
Yeah.
I love Branner de Cru. I'm really hoping that the price works. And the same with the Pichons. They were delicious.
I've always been very loyal to Branner myself. When I've been talking with Harles, I bought a case of Magnums for my son's birth in 2001, which we feel very old. But yeah, it's a chateau that I love. You've got that juiciness of Saint-Julien, and situated right up, very near, obviously, de Cru de Caillou, and right opposite Mitjavile. It's in a hell of a little slot, and they really know what they're doing. So I hope that works. The Pichons, which slightly suffer from the fact that you always get asked sort of which one you prefer, and I think it's one of those sort of minor details. I thought both were good this year. I thought maybe for me, and I'm hoping you disagree, but I thought maybe if I had to have one rather than both, I'd have Baron.
Oh, good.
So
I disagree with you. Yeah, Lalonde was stunning for me this year. One of, if not my favourite Pauillac, which is saying a lot.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, it's just different days, different tastings, different bottles, but it's the way it goes. But it was brilliant of Christelle, who has a hell of a job organising our schedule over the 7 days that we're there. And for the first time, I think we managed to have Pichon, and Latour one appointment after each other, so we actually didn't have to do too much up and down the road. But
that is some organisation there. Usually you are driving up and down.
It is exactly that.
And then Thursday, the big one, Margot.
Yeah, I mean, we're going past Wednesday when we've got Carme Brion, of course, which is a massive one. But yeah, I think there are some big releases that we've been looking forward to. So yeah, Margot, who we tasted very well. Calm, who we kind of adore and have been early sort of jumpers on that bandwagon. In fact, we very nearly looked at getting it exclusively going back 15 years before it got sold. But yeah, we love what Guillaume does there, which is terrific. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting week. I hope this gap then doesn't see, but I actually, in many ways, I feel that Bordeaux is realising that they've made a big effort, but actually that effort needs to continue in terms of the pricing, and hopefully we will see that continue.
Yeah, I mean, last year, this doesn't happen every year, but sometimes the early releases are sort of what the people want with price reductions, and then towards the end of the campaign, you see that there's a little bit of, once the water's been tested, that Château think that they can just go back up to somewhere where they were the previous year and everything will be okay because the wines are selling. I don't think that that's the case this year. People are tuned in, and I'm having a lot of conversations with people who are asking what was the price last year, how much have they come down by. So it's just a good thing to reiterate that very much we've come up with these price brackets because we think that that's the fair value for them. and really hoping that all those wines that we've mentioned come down enough to make it that really great buy, including Cardinal Bril. The wines are great, but yeah, we've got all that to come. It should be a fun week. That's probably us, to be honest.
I mean, I suppose beyond that, there's still a few things that we're waiting on. No news on the likes of Conscient, Figeac and things like that. So we'll let you know as we hear more on that. And then Trotanoir and Petrus will be our sort of closing gambits eventually. But yeah, it's interesting. There's still work to be done. But I think looking at the figures, and it's not all about figures, but it's been given the prices have come down, it's been a better campaign certainly than it could have been, and maybe than we expected. So hopefully, a word RMD pretty much bans, but one hopes that the prices will continue to be where they are, and they'll be more fun to have. And I think for those who haven't dipped in yet, us getting a selection of our picks together of wines that we can still access that we think are really cracking value, and saying, look, for 1,500 quid, here's 8 6-packs, one from each commune. I think there's a lot of fun to be had there. So that's something we're definitely going to look at doing.
Yeah, a good year where there isn't anything that is bad in any sense. There's no communes to avoid. So yeah, plenty to go up. Well, in that case,
yeah.
See you next week.
Well, yes, and I'm afraid that Mr. Muller will probably be back and insisting on taking his seat, but we'll have to see.
He might be relegated.
He might have eaten too much in New York, and who knows. But I'm sure he'll be back.
We'll see. Cheers.
Thanks very much.